Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Thursday, November 6th, 2025, and today we are talking about using rye cover crops in a warm region, growing tomatoes in the same place every year, and what constitutes a crop rotation really. So let's do it. All right, happy Thursday to you all. I hope all is well in your worlds right now and that you are feeling good about your winter and or summer, so as not to forget our Southern Hemispherians. We shall see if we get another visit from our pig friend today. I mean, the weird thing is that it's making Hannah and I kind of want pigs, which should be the opposite reaction. Now, to be clear, we are not going to get pigs, but the nostalgia for them is strong. Honestly, I'm probably more liable to get a pig as a pet right now than I am as livestock. Pigs are just fun. Other than that, yesterday was relatively productive, starting to get our blueberry patch together. Got it mowed, got the holes dug and prepped with some peat moss that I had. We're not doing anything super fancy with that area. It's just kind of now like a waiting game for the plants to go dormant and then for those holes to get wet and saturated, then I'll go ahead and put them in. In fact, Patreon member Lee Kossip had asked for me to detail the process of the blueberries, and I will definitely do that as we go along. And then later for its own segment, maybe even own video, we'll see. Mike and I want to do more sort of making of a bed videos for each crop, start to finish style in the future. So that's on the agenda for the 2026 growing season, just hauling the camera around with me more like a pet pig. Also, yesterday, I neglected to mention the plane crash that happened in Louisville, which is just horrific. And I just wanted to send out our love to all the families that are going through that and for that area. Quite wild stuff. I just absolutely don't know what that would have been like for those families, for the people around to see that, to witness that. So yeah, we're just sending our love. Unbelievable stuff. Changing gears a little bit, don't forget that this month's video challenge is to send in your 20-second garden recipe videos. It doesn't have to be an actual recipe. It can just be a dish you made from what you grew, but we want to see it. Send those to farmermike@notillgrowers.com. Oh, and last thing, it was a full moon last night, and I got a picture of it. The moon is wild looking. Like you can see all the craters and all the different, things that are going on the moon. It's amazing that this like giant circular rock is just floating around us all the time. Just all the time. Amazing. All right, so as is the tradition on Thursdays, we will take a few Patreon questions. Patreon members, don't hesitate to get your questions in to the November show thread, which I actually did get up by November the 5th. So that's pretty good. Get your questions, your topics, show ideas, whatever you want, whatever you're interested. That is super helpful for me to not only know what you all want to hear about, but also to not, of course, only talk about what I want to talk about every single day, which I mean, I can do that. And I do that, but I appreciate your guidance dearly. All right, so I've got a few mostly related questions from the same Patreon member today that we will tackle. Those come in from Patreon member Philip Kearney, who writes, quote, "New member here, getting my shout out was fun. I've also updated my profile to include my last name. Didn't know that it wasn't on there. So thanks for bringing that to my attention. Thank you so much for everything you share. You're awesome. I'm in year one of trying to figure out my capacity, so everything is kind of an experiment this year. I'm in 8A, Northeast Georgia. Right now, my 25 by 30 inch beds are full. No clue when they'll be done. Various crops, but I mean, my eggplants planted in April are still producing, so shrug emoji. Probably my favorite emoji. I did buy rye seed for a cover crop at the end of the season, but I'm starting onion seeds next month to plant in November. I'm thinking there maybe is no hard rule about quote unquote end of the season here, but assuming things actually stop, one, how could I best use my rye / should I use something else? I know you've answered similar questions, but I'm not sure I've heard your advice for my zone. I've got landscape fabric until you tell us how to use the burlap to cover beds, but I want to build up the soil / try cover crops for the first time, end quote. All right, so that will be question one of a few questions here that we'll tackle today of Phillips, but it is a good one. You're right that we've talked about using rye and other cover crops a number of times in a similar situation, but I think the zonal stuff is really important because cover crops like this are going to act a bit different in your climate than others. In particular, the rye is going to grow a little bit faster faster and be ready to die a little bit earlier. And by die, I mean it's going to be at that milk stage when it's at its most vulnerable. But so too will your winter be shorter. So the same rules will largely apply. First, wherever you plant the rye, you will need to know what will be there in the spring in terms of your crops. This will help you decide if rye is the right thing. Because if you want that bed for early crops, rye may not make any sense at all. In fact, you may be better off just planting, like a winter hardy crop like spinach, that will quite easily survive your winters. It survives fine here without row cover most winters in zone 6B, so it should be more than fine there. That way you have something to harvest all winter, but also a crop that is relatively easy to terminate in the spring. However, if you're planting some, larger crops like late tomatoes or peppers or cucumbers or whatever for that spot, and maybe are interested in mulch from the rye, then it's okay to plant those areas into that rye. For us, rye is pretty much ready to terminate in May. For you, it could be as early as April. Now, you don't have to wait for those current crops to be dead to plant the rye, but the bed prep will make a difference in success of the cover crop itself. So if the bed is in relatively good shape, then I say go for it. Either broadcast it, then lightly rake it in, or just sow it underneath of the existing crop with a seeder, then water. If the bed is a bit weedy or just in rough shape in terms of nutrition or compaction, wait until those current crops have run their course and then prep the bed before you plant the rye. You have plenty of time there, I would think, all the way probably until December or even in late January, although the rye just won't get as big if you plant it the later that you plant it. You could also do something like peas, which are a little bit easier to kill in the spring, that they just don't give you quite as much mulch. But if you need those beds early, maybe something like a field pea or something would be a better choice. Anyway, it is rye planting season, so if you're going to do it, you're in a good window. Growers in warmer regions, let us know how you utilize rye and if you do. Otherwise, it's time to take a little break. And when we come back, growing tomatoes in the same place year after year, what to know, BRB. Today's episode is brought to you by High Mowing Organic Seeds. High Mowing Organic Seeds is celebrating their 30th anniversary with 47 fabulous new varieties for 2026. Highlights include downy mildew-resistant cucumbers, a poppy that looks like cotton candy, and 12 new tomato varieties. High Mowing offers more than 750 varieties of certified organic, non-GMO vegetables, flowers, herbs, and cover crops, all trialed for optimal performance in organic growing systems. High Mowing has the professional quality seeds and supportive grower reps to get you from seed to harvest. Visit highmowingseeds.com to request a catalog and use code 26NOTILL, all one word, 26NOTILL, for 10% off your order of $100 or more. That's highmowingseeds.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Farmhand. Farmers who partnered with Farmhand say they grew an average of 63% this year because it's more than software. Farmhand is your business coach and assistant, helping to sell out, save time, and grow smarter with real data from real farms, shaping websites that convert, campaigns that sell, and fulfillment systems that run smoothly. Curious what that looks like? Meet the founder, Ari, at farmhand.partners/no-till and see the same insights and support the fastest growing farms rely on every week. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener or viewer, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. Does this show bring you $2 worth of value every month? Maybe $5? You can support it. And I try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but honestly, I get so many Patreon questions. That's pretty much all I can get to, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. So today's second Patreon question, again, comes to us from Philip Kearney, who writes, quote, I have a 10 by 20 homemade greenhouse tunnel, one of those metal framed chicken house prefab deals, covered in greenhouse plastic. I did tomatoes and cucumbers. Tomatoes are balling out still, going strong. Probably try grafting next year, but how do people grow tomatoes in a permanent greenhouse year after year? I can move mine-ish, but is there a way to not have to, end quote. Okay, great questions here. So when tunnel space is limited, crop rotations, which we will discuss a bit more in the next segment, get fudged a bit. And this goes for almost every professional grower I know. We grow our tomatoes and cucumbers in tunnels, and we just do not always have the tunnel space to put those crops on a 4-year rotation out of that tunnel or into different beds, which is kind of the rotation that they would prefer. So often they are only getting like a year rotation off of the same spot, if that. Sometimes they are just going right back into the same area again and again. So how do organically minded growers, if you're organic, you have to show a crop rotation, but if you're organically minded, how do those sort of growers get away with that without literally bringing in new soil every year, which is a thing. People will scrape the soil and bring in new soil every year, which I obviously do not recommend. Well, part of that is just replenishing the soil as best you can with good soil amendment practices, good soil management practices in general, and good sanitation, which I don't mean like bleaches and stuff like that. I mean literally picking up plant matter and keeping things tidy and cleaning off your tools and all those good things. Also, things like grafting will help tremendously with vigor and disease protection. Some growers may have a few tunnels where they can rotate tomatoes from year to year. So maybe it's the tunnel tomato this year, and then next year it's like the greens and cucumbers tunnel or whatever. But if you're just working with like a single tunnel and just a handful of beds, this is what, like quote unquote rotation may look like, or has looked like, at least on our farm in those situations. First, wherever we grew tomatoes last year will not be tomatoes next year. That bed will either be cucumbers or some other mix of non-solanaceae crops like brassicas, lettuces, etc. In January, we like to clear the new tomato bed of any debris from the cucumbers or whatever was grown there the year before. Amend it, then sow carrots on the edges. These carrots will not be out by the time the tomatoes are planted, but the carrots will come out by the time the tomatoes take over in May. In February, we start our tomatoes, and in March, we graft them onto disease-resistant rootstock, and I've done grafting videos and segments that I will link in the show notes. Then we transplant those by mid-April into the tunnel in between the carrots with some nutritional compost mixed into the soil where we plant them. And then obviously a good amount of water, maybe even some compost tea to sort of water them in. As we prune them throughout their lives, we like to take the prune material with us to reduce disease buildup in the tunnel, though I'll admit by the end of the summer, when I probably need to be doing this the most, I sometimes get a bit lazy. But it's good to try and make a habit out of taking that pruned material out of the tunnel when you can, all the leaf matter and stuff that may have harbor diseases. And that's kind of the approach. If you were growing in the same bed year after year, you would really want to make sure the soil is well amended, consulting with an agronomist at wherever you get your soil test done to ensure the soil is healthy as can be. Clean your tools well with isopropyl alcohol, spray off any digging tools that you use, wash your hands, keep the tunnel relatively clean. Those things will all help. Now, do some people do none or of that really and get away with it? Sure, they will until they don't. And if you are trying to do this for a business, it's best to just be smart and careful about it. Some people may also do some solarization on their tunnel soils with clear plastic to help kill any potential diseases. It's hard to find time with tomatoes to do that because they usually come out late in the season and then go back into the soil before it really gets hot enough out or sunny enough outside to make the solarization effective. But perhaps in your climate, with such a long season, you could find a window for that. Anyway, what say you all? Let us know. And otherwise, we're going to take a quick break and then talk about what constitutes a crop rotation anyway. Be right back.
My yields aren't super big, but I do try to use everything that I grow, and it just brings me a ton of joy.
Today's episode is brought to you by Johnny's Selected Seeds. Johnny's Selected Seeds is a proud supporter of Growers Daily. At Johnny's, they do more than sell seeds. They grow them. They trial them to see how they perform on Johnny's research farm in Maine and across the U.S. and Canada. Only the best varieties are added to their catalog and website. When you need proven varieties you can count on and detailed guidance from seedling to harvest, consider Johnny's your trusted growing partner. JohnnySeeds.com. That's JohnnySeeds.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Marble Seed. The Marble Seed Organic Farming Conference attracts a wide range of regenerative and organic farmers for 3 days of skill development and community building. Farmer Drew Kramer said, "Going to Marble Seed was so invigorating at a time when I needed it most. I picked up tools I'm already using." The conference is the final week in February in La Crosse, Wisconsin. Early registration opens December 4th at conference.marbleseed.org. That's conference.marbleseed.org. All right, back to the show. All right, Philip's final question is, quote, "Crop rotation is important, we know this, but how effective is it in such a small space? 8 beds, 30-inch wide, 14-inch between them. I'll hopefully raise 6 or more beds this fall, but that would mostly be as big as the space could be. I use row cover and stuff, but does growing squash in a row less than 5 feet from where it was last year even count as rotation?" End quote. Great question. And I've talked a bit about crop rotation on a small scale a bit on the show, but I love this form of the question. So let's dive into it. Important to understand why we rotate crops to decide if rotation is actually sufficient. One, we rotate crops to rotate away from the pressure we are putting on one available nutrient or another. If we are growing a crop that has a high nitrogen or phosphorus demand, for instance, or whatever, it doesn't make sense to grow that crop in the same place year after year because it will have depleted some amount of the available nutrients it's going to require the next year, unless you do heavy fertilization like mulching with compost. In your example of moving the crop 5 feet away from the last place you grew it, this nutrient need is largely met, especially if there's a pathway between the two crops. 2, we rotate crops for disease and pest pressure. So with something like squash, diseases like downy mildew and pests like squash bugs, which can overwinter on last year's residue, are something that, in your example, that rotation would not quite be far enough maybe. Though you probably could use something like insect netting to get away with that small of a rotation. And honestly, you may not even realize that you have a pest or disease until the next year because maybe it was a minimal pest and disease presence the year before, even unnoticeable, but then some of the parents of whatever pest put down their proverbial roots in wait for your literal roots. The last thing to think about in terms of crop rotation is that we rotate crops for biodiversity in the soil. Different plants bring in different biology, which keeps a range of diverse organisms thriving. Wait, you may say, but wouldn't the same species cultivate the microbes that species needs? Wouldn't that be a good thing? Yes and no. For a while, it could be a boon potentially, but the risk of pathogen buildup is where you run into a wall with this way of thinking. As your microbial diversity declines, your risk of having heavy pathogen presence with no defensive microbes at least, rises. Basically, you limit the tools in your microbial disease fighting toolbox by focusing on only a specific set of microbes. So yeah, in a really healthy soil and well-maintained garden with sufficient fertility and habitat for beneficials, you can get away with less crop rotation or crop rotations that are less spread out. But for many, if not most of us, rotating as far as possible is just good insurance. And when you don't have that, you have to have other things to insure. So that would be like row covers. And like I said, a lot of perennials, flowers, that sort of stuff that can bring in the beneficials that will help protect your plants. Anyway, I think that's it on this particular subject for the day. And listeners can let us know your thoughts and feelings and dreams and aspirations and crop rotation strategies, or maybe they're all the same thing. We'll find out. Otherwise, I hate to say it Thursday, but we are done here. Don't forget, No Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. You can learn more about how to do that, maybe get your end of the year tax break in our show notes. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music and Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing. And also shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at notillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of November, you get a shout on the show. So big shout outs today to Kate Walsh and Annette. It's fun. All right, so we scored another story because we had some awesome Patreon signups. So that's excellent news. And in this story, our barber, Leonard, is busy doing his thing, sweeping up after a previous client when 2 older regulars come into Leonard's barbershop, the name of which is called the Tortoise and the Hare, Hair, both because every barber needs a good pun in their barber name, but also because Leonard is famously slow. But anyway, the 2 patrons, Terry and Ray, sit down for their weekly trim and start bickering about some tennis court or something or other. Leonard can't entirely make it out. Just then, though, a man walks in with a pistol and demands that Leonard give him all the cash in the register. Now, the label of famously slow applies even in times of danger, and this infuriates the robber. And just as he's about to run at Leonard, Ray sticks his foot out and trips the robber, who goes crashing to the ground, dropping his pistol. Terry then belly flops on the robber to hold him down while Leonard picks up the gun. Then Leonard kind of calmly hands the robber a small wad of cash and says, "Thank you for selling me your pistol. I'll add it to the collection." Terry and Ray laugh, the robber leaves, and Leonard gets back to sweeping up, getting ready for his next client. Thanks for watching and or listening. We shall see you tomorrow for Friday, for Feedback Friday. It'll be fun. Yep. Bye.